This episode of The Spiritual Edge is brought to you by Templeton Religion Trust. We're changing the conversation about religion, together with you and all who are curious. Join the conversation at templetonreligiontrust.org.
From KELW and The Spiritual Edge, this is Becoming Muslim. Stories of Americans who've chosen Islam. I'm Hana Baba. This is a recitation of the Quran in Spanish.
Y juro por los siglos de los siglos que la humanidad de veras están perdidos, salvo aquellos que aman a su Creador y que hacen buenas obras.
Growing up as a Sudanese Muslim kid in Texas and the Midwest in the 1980s, I didn't know of any Latinx Muslims. But today, they're definitely here. There are currently hundreds of thousands of Latino Muslims in America. My colleague Natasha Haverty explored some of the reasons why they're converting.
Well, one reason has to do with the mass exodus from the Catholic Church. For others, it's tracing heritage back 800 years to Andalusia and the Muslim kingdom that ruled the Iberian Peninsula. A lot of Latinx converts call themselves reverts.
Natasha takes it from here to tell us about two men whose paths have been very different.
Sometimes I feel like people feel like there's a reason that they have to move away from their culture, and they lose themselves.
We have to remember who we are as Latinos while we walk this path of Islam. Nowhere does it tell us to discard who we are.
A lot of Latinx Muslims talk about a pressure they feel after they convert to erase a huge part of who they are, the Latinx part. Some call it their Latinidad.
I did not choose to be Puerto Rican. Now, if I could have chose, I would have chose Puerto Rican because I love it, right?
And they talk about a loneliness that comes from that pressure.
We're completely used to breaking our fast alone. Like, this is something that's not foreign to a lot of us who've come to the religion because we don't have Muslim families.
Aron, Siebert-Llera and Raul Gonzalez both converted to Islam 20 years and half their lifetimes ago. Both have been trying to answer the question of how to reconcile their identity as Latinos with their identity as Muslims ever since. One has dedicated his life to helping the Latino Muslim community find itself. The other still isn't even sure being in a community as a Latino Muslim is possible. Let's start with Raul. As a little boy, Raul's earliest experience of religion was feeling terrified.
My auntie was very, very Pentecostal. She didn't tint her hair. She was very, they were very modest in their dress. But it was, kind of freaked me out because in the Pentecostal religion, and this is not to downplay anyone's religion, this is my experience. The person over here would start speaking in tongues. Latina woman talking crazy. I'm used to that because I'm Puerto Rican. But, in a language I don't know, I'm getting ready to run.
I meet Raul on a Saturday afternoon in early March of 2020, just before the pandemic hit, inside a storefront mosque in Chicago's West Englewood neighborhood. Most signs down the avenue here are in Spanish, selling manicures, legal services, tacos. Raul smiles warmly as he passes through the doors. He's stocky, has a gray beard. He wears glasses and a taquilla, a cloth skull cap.
I think this is probably it here.
That's fine. We find a seat in the little lobby where worshipers leave their shoes before entering a huge room with low ceilings and fluorescent lights. Just as Raul and I sit, the one other person in here, an older guy, goes to the far back corner and starts to pray.
This is called the Adhan. This is the call to prayer. 5 times a day, the caller, the muezzin, he calls out, it's time to pray. 5 times a day, the religion of Islam calls you to success. It's a reminder that Islam leads to success.
I ask in a whisper if the man praying is the imam. Raul smiles and shakes his head. No.
See, this is the thing about Islam. There's no chief priests. If the imam falls out, we're not supposed to stop the prayer.
This is what seems to light Raul up the most as he gets into his relationship with Islam. He feels like it fully invites him in without a single leader telling him what to do. That unlike the Christian church he was raised in, which has a clear hierarchy with one person telling you what's right and wrong, Islam feels more egalitarian. Growing up, Raul faced a lot of violence as a kid and lived all over.
New Jersey, Florida, Puerto Rico.
Some years in an orphanage, some in foster homes.
You know, always moving around. Whoever's available to hold me down, hold me down.
He'd done time in a few juvenile institutions by the time he was a teenager. When he came back to Chicago to live with his mom, he joined a gang.
Then when I came home, I was looking for more family. And then I started, getting involved with the street family. And, the gang was my religion. The gang was my religion. And I was a worshiper.
Raul has a word for the years of his life before he came to Islam.
It's called Jahaliya, the days of ignorance.
He's hesitant to go into those days. For him, choosing Islam was a chance to start over, to erase that chapter. What Raul does say is when he was in a gang, he was on the front line.
It demands a lot, If a lifestyle, when you choose a lifestyle, you gotta follow the way of that lifestyle, right? And I was fully committed. That's what I mean when I worship.
Raul says his family tried to get him to change course, tried to push him back to the church. They even sent him to seminary. Raul says he knew he should change, but the pull of the streets was so much stronger than the pull of Christian priesthood. So his worshiping of the streets took him all the way to prison, where he spent years of his life. After a fight with a corrections officer, Raul got sent to the hardest prison in the state.
Pontiac Correction Center in Pontiac, Illinois. It's the highest max joint in the Illinois Department of Correction, and 23 hours a day. No human contact, no nothing.
And one day, on a walk back from his daily hour of rec, his arms and legs in chains, Raul passed a prisoner walking the other way down the gallery who called out to him, claiming to be a guy he'd known from the streets. But Raul had no idea who this guy was. He looked nothing like the gang member he was claiming to be. What was with the long beard, the totally different energy?
And he said, bro, and he pulled his beard, man. He says, look. And I looked at him and I said, oh, that is you, bro. What's up? I said, what you owe, man? He says, I'm Muslim. I said, Muslim? How you a Muslim? We Puerto Ricans. We kings,
Seeing this friend in a new, unrecognizable form got under Raul's skin. Back in his cell, he didn't have access to electronics like TV or a Walkman. That's what happens when you get in a fight with a guard in prison. But Raul did get his hands on the Quran, which for the next year, he says he read over and over. And one day, without any fellow worshipers or teachers to talk to, he made one of the biggest decisions of his life.
I took my shahada right there in an 8 gallery of Pontiac Correctional Facility.
Almost 20 years later, Raul has positioned himself to be sort of the helper figure for any Spanish-speaking person in Chicago finding their way to Islam. As he and I are talking, a couple other people, colleagues of his, arrive at the center and start setting up a folding table with plates of Mexican cookies and Qurans in Spanish, getting ready to greet any Latinos who may show up today for an introductory class to Islam. Their group is called Ojalá. It's an important word in Spanish, and it's descended from a phrase in Arabic that sounds really similar.
Inshallah, God willing.
Ojalá, inshallah, God willing. Raul says the idea of Ojalá Foundation is all about being a place where Latinx people can still feel a sense of belonging as they explore Islam.
We're a dawah organization. This word dawah means... in the Arabic word, it literally means a call, but it also means an invitation. So it's a call, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to think.
As part of that, Raul goes out into the streets most Friday nights with other Muslims and hands out food, or these days PPE, to people who are homeless and tells people about Islam. Raul's a gig worker by day, but doing this work with Ojalá seems to be the way he's found himself. Raul says there are as many variations of how to be Latino as there are to be Muslim. For him, his purpose and ability to feel like he belongs in this religion he's embraced is putting himself on the front lines of building the community of Latino Muslims here in Chicago. He says a big thing his organization can offer is just a shared language.
So the Latino, there's a language barrier, okay, with because a lot of Latinos don't speak English, and many of the imams, they don't speak Spanish. So what happens when a Latino takes the Shahada? Okay, everybody greets him, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. But then, where's the follow-up? Who's going to teach him how to pray?
Behind Raul, his handful of peers from Ojalá are putting up the organization's banner. And there's a kind of anxiousness in here, like you might feel in the minutes before your birthday party's supposed to start, about who, if anyone, is going to show up for the class today. It's still a small community, and there's a sense the group is on borrowed territory in here. The day I met Raul, he had to go to work, but he told me I should wait around, that he was hoping a particular guy who'd once been a member of Ojalá would be showing up to talk to me. I waited for a while, but the guy never showed. A few weeks later, I found him by accident, and I learned he was never planning on coming that afternoon.
A lot of times with Islam, you'll meet someone who was raised in the religion, and they'll barely even know you. They won't even know your name. And right away, they want to know your story.
This is the second guy I want to tell you about. His name is Aron Siebert-Llera.
How did you come to Islam, brother? How did you... And they think it's going to be like this quick couple-sentence answer.
Unlike Raul, Aron has never found a feeling of belonging as a Latino Muslim. And it's clear early into our talking, which was all by phone, we met after the pandemic hit, that he's hoping I'm not one of these people just looking for a quick answer about who he is. He says he appreciates big questions, always has.
My mom tells me that I used to really ask a lot of questions, about where everything came from, where the birds and the trees and everything else, where it came from and how it originated. And I always had those questions. I didn't know what exactly I was looking for.
Thinking back to that childhood self now, he says the thing he was looking for was always something to believe in, a container to put all his questions into.
I was looking for a house, and that house was going to be where I wanted to put my morals and put my ideals and put how I was going to live my life. And to me, that house was going to be a religion.
For a lot of Aron's childhood growing up in Wisconsin, Aron says the questions people asked him were all about what box they could put him in. Like when his mostly white classmates said they were surprised he was part Mexican.
Like, you didn't get it when my mom came to our school and did a ballet folklorico presentation with her large Mexican dress? That didn't signal anything to you?
Or in Decembers, when friends came over to his dad's house and got confused about the decorations.
At my dad's house, we happened to have a Star David on the top of the Christmas tree. We had a menorah sitting next to the Christmas tree. It was normal.
Aron has a culturally Jewish, spiritually atheist father who came out as gay, a Mexican-American mother who's also an atheist, and the way his very existence always seemed to put other people in a tailspin. He says that shaped how at home he was within himself.
Part of that identity issues that I had, it led to also not being very self-confident.
Aron said by the time he got to college, he needed to get a better hold of who he was, on his own terms. A huge part of his background was his Latinidad, his cultural heritage as someone who lives in the U.S. and has roots in Latin America.
It was the first time in my life that I was in classes where I was learning about me. I was learning about my history, about people like me.
Hi, this is Judy Silber, executive editor of The Spiritual Edge. We'll get back to the story shortly, but I'm here to remind you that more stories from the Becoming Muslim series are available by looking for The Spiritual Edge in your podcast player. Or you can go to our website, thespiritualedge.org. That's also where you can donate to the project. We're so proud of the Becoming Muslim series, but this kind of journalism isn't cheap. Believe it or not, we started planning back in 2017, and it took a whole team to make it happen. If you appreciate this kind of sensitive, in-depth storytelling, please consider making a donation. We are committed to bringing you more thoughtful journalism about religion and spirituality, but we need your help. So go to our website, thespiritualedge.org, and make a donation today. We appreciate your listening and your support. Now back to the story.
Just before he graduated, 9/11 happened. And as the religion of Islam was under attacks from the media and politicians, Aron just kept asking if it could really be as bad as people said. He wanted to see for himself, so he bought the Quran. He read it and explored for the next 2 years, all the way into grad school in Chicago. And one morning, he had an experience that was actually a lot like Raul's. A friend of his, who was Mexican like Aron, showed up to class and sat down next to him, but Aron didn't recognize her. She was wearing a hijab and a jibab, fully covered.
What happened? And she's explaining how she had become Muslim the week before, like in between our classes, like over the weekend, I guess. And I was shocked just because we used to study together and I had no clue of something she was even thinking about.
Just like with Raul, seeing this friend who'd gone through this metamorphosis gave Aron a way into his own. He took the Shahada later that year. But the thing to understand about Aron's journey is that all that was just the beginning. He may have found his house, but he's still finding his home in it. Today, in his mid-40s, Aron has a beard, a shaved head, with a young-seeming face that seems like it's holding back a wisecrack. Almost 20 years since his conversion, Aron says he still hasn't found the community he'd hoped for. Part of that, he says, is he's never really felt welcome to be all the different parts of who he is, especially the Latino part around other Muslims.
A lot of us would go to a mosque, whether it be Arab or South Asian or whatever it might be, and not feel welcome and not feel like we are a part of that mosque. I used to get made fun of by other people when I was new to Islam if I'd wear a guayabera.
That's a traditional shirt in parts of Central America, which is usually embroidered with 2 or 4 pockets on the front.
And people are like, oh, what are those pockets for? And they start making fun of your clothes. You're like, dude, am I going to start making fun of your dress that you're wearing?
At one point, he tried joining a group for Latino Muslims, that group of Raul's, Ojalá. But he didn't share a lot of their origin stories, a lot of which were defined by trauma or a need to heal. Aron didn't have things he wanted to forget so much as he wanted to find somewhere he could be all of himself. A few years later, Aron faced his own trauma, the death of his wife to cancer. And he says Islam, this house he'd found for himself, gave him shelter and structure he needed to live through that loss.
And, going through those things before, without religion, it would have been much harder for me, I think, to deal with. I wouldn't have had as many answers or ways to approach dealing with that as I do now.
Aron says he's still working to reconcile the many parts of who he is within himself and in relation with other people. He brings a dry sense of humor to it when he does make it to community gatherings, and he tries to delight in the ways being Mexican and Muslim can coexist, whether it's through social justice or sharing food.
Having halal tamales, made with like vegetable shortening or butter or something like that, it's really cool. You're able to be yourself and have your new belief system, but still be yourself and not be judged for still wanting to be yourself.
He has friends he's met at mosque that he hangs out with, guys he plays soccer with or barbecues with, but he says that feeling of being on the outside never totally goes away. And more over the years, Aron's opted out of going to mosque.
It can be lonely, definitely. Do I ever get an invite, to someone's house during Ramadan? No, because I'm going to be a different culture, a different background, and might be a little different. It would be nice to have a little more. It would be nice to have the community that I would hope to have.
Since the pandemic hit, Aron's seen folks on social media talking about how lonely they are without being able to see their community at mosque, or how hard it was to be alone on Ramadan this year. And he's thought,
well, now you have a little idea what it's like to embrace the religion and to not have that community.
Aron and Raul Gonzalez from earlier have crossed paths over the years. And on the one hand, the two have this really specific thing in common. They know this struggle so well, of being treated like an outsider in your own religion, of other people being overwhelmed by all the parts of their identity as Latino Muslims. But where Aron might react to that by going inward, Raul goes outward.
I've always wanted a family, that's even why I got involved in the gang, because I wanted a family. And so now I found Islam. Yes, they look at me funny. If I allowed other Muslims' perspective of me to determine whether I was going to stay a Muslim or not, I would not be a Muslim right now.
In the first Ramadan under COVID, Raul posted a video of himself trying to reach out to Latino Muslims.
We have arrived at another ending of this Ramadan and beginning of Eid. Alhamdulillah, may you and all your family enjoy the celebration of Eid. You deserve it.
Unlike Raul, Aron would never be the guy to make the video or feel like a member of something. But he says this lifelong grappling with all the parts of who he is and how to be in relation with other people while doing that has only deepened his faith.
When I talk about where I am and where I feel in community and where I feel comfortable, that's an evolutionary process. And I think we'll always be evolving and we'll always be changing.
Right now, though, Aron says he's putting his energy into raising a son. A Syrian, Mexican, Eastern European, Muslim American son who will know who he is and feel at home in all of it. And just like his dad, the boy has a lot of questions.
That story was produced by Natasha Haverty. Becoming Muslim is a project of the Spiritual Edge podcast at KALW Public Radio. Support for the series comes from the Templeton Religion Trust. Jeb Sharp is the editor, Tarek Foda is the sound engineer, Lindsay Myers-Humley is the digital content manager, Tom Levy is the photographer, our executive editor is Judy Silber. Thanks also to Katie McCutcheon and Jad Khalil for help with research for the series. We're grateful to the experts who helped us along the way, including Edward Curtis, Juliette Gallonier, Zarina Grewal, Sajida Jalalzai, Hind Mekki, Bashir Mohammed, Harold Morales, Spirit, and Kayla Wheeler. Pod ops by Megan Jones. Jeffrey Burke-Witten did our logo. Thank you to Ben Trefny, the news director at KALW, and to Matt Martin, who helped conceive of the series. To hear more stories from this series, check out our complete archive, including other stories about religion from around the world at thespiritualedge.org. We're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for listening. I'm Hana Baba.